in an age where the line between healer and sorcerer was often blurred. Our ancestors somehow performed brain surgeries with tools as rudimentary as stones, leaving modern doctors in awe of what we were once capable of. However, not all early medical practices were successful. Many patients suffered cruel and agonizing deaths due to these experiments and shocking rituals. These are the most interesting and grotesque medical practices from our ancestors.
Number 15. Trepanation. In ancient times, a throbbing headache wasn't met with a couple of aspirin, but a procedure that involved drilling a hole into the skull. This practice, known as trepanation, might seem barbaric by today's standards, yet it was a surprisingly common medical intervention in the ancient world. Our ancestors believed that trepanation could cure a wide range of ailments, including headaches, seizures, depression, and other perceived mental disorders. The practice dates back an astounding 7,000 to 10,000 years, placing it among humanity's earliest known surgical procedures. Evidence of trepanation has been unearthed across the globe, with over 1,500 trepanned skulls discovered in archaeological sites spanning continents. From Europe and Scandinavia to North America, Russia, China, and South America, this practice appears to have been remarkably widespread. In the Russian port city of Rostov-on-Don, archaeologists even uncovered evidence suggesting that trepanation was used as an exorcism ritual. Early trepanations were performed using rudimentary yet effective tools such as obsidian blades. As technology advanced, mechanical drills were developed, enhancing surgical efficiency. What's even more remarkable is the surprisingly high survival rate associated with these ancient surgeries. Examination of the skulls revealed that many individuals exhibited signs of healing, indicating they not only survived the procedure, but lived for years afterward. While seemingly a relic of the past, trepanation, now referred to as craniotomy, still holds a place in modern medicine. Surgeons utilize the procedure, although with significantly more sophisticated and sterile instruments to treat traumatic brain injuries, relieve pressure on the brain, and address various other conditions. Even obsidian blades, favored for their precision in cosmetic procedures, haven't entirely vanished from the operating room, though their use remains controversial and is not FDA approved. Number 14. Mercury Treatments. Mercury, a shimmering quicksilver metal, has long captivated humanity. Its use in healing practices dates back millennia, intertwined with ancient civilizations and their beliefs in its mystical and medicinal properties. The Egyptians, Greeks, and Chinese, renowned for their advancements in early medicine, embraced mercury, incorporating it into their healing practices. They believed that this element held potent curative powers. Mercury-based compounds, such as mercuric oxide, calomel, and mercury chloride, became staples in traditional medicine across the globe. These compounds were touted as remedies for a wide array of ailments, from syphilis, a devastating sexually transmitted infection that ravaged populations for centuries, to healing wounds, and even addressing mental disorders. The allure of mercury as a cure-all transcended cultural boundaries, solidifying its place in medical history. During the Renaissance and the early modern period, mercury's popularity surged in Europe. Physicians, influenced by centuries-old traditions and lacking a complete understanding of the human body, readily prescribed mercury-based ointments, pills, and suppositories to their patients. The perceived benefits of mercury overshadowed the yet-to-be-understood risks associated with its use. However, as science advanced and medical knowledge expanded, a darker side to mercury emerged, casting a long shadow over its once celebrated reputation. The medical community gradually became aware of the toxic nature of this seemingly miraculous element. Prolonged exposure, even to small amounts, could lead to a debilitating condition known as mercury poisoning, or mercurialism. This condition manifested in a range of symptoms, including tremors, a characteristic trembling in the hands and limbs, cognitive impairment, and other neurological problems. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, The dangers of mercury were undeniable, as they were extensively documented through rigorous scientific research and clinical observations. This growing body of evidence led to a sharp decline in mercury's medical use as safer and more effective treatments emerged. Number 13. Cannibalism. From classical Rome to the 20th century, medicinal cannibalism, a practice as macabre as it sounds, permeated all levels of European society. It wasn't a hidden, taboo ritual confined to the shadows. It was surprisingly mainstream. Monarchs, popes, intellectuals, and everyday citizens alike partook in the consumption of extracts and concoctions derived from human remains. The human corpse became a gruesome source of medicine, with brains, flesh, fat, livers, blood, skulls, bones, hair, even sweat, prepared and consumed for their purported healing properties. This demand for human ingredients created a booming business for executioners, who would strip flesh, bone, blood, fat, and other valuable bits from the recently deceased to sell to eager crowds gathered for executions. The trade extended beyond borders, with traders supplying corpses from distant lands to meet the insatiable demand. Even gravediggers, under the cover of darkness, would exhume bodies to sell to physicians and apothecaries. As unsettling as this practice may seem to the modern mind, it was deeply rooted in the alchemical and philosophical beliefs of the time. Consuming the body, according to alchemists, meant absorbing the power of the soul, the very essence of creation. Each concoction, regardless of its origins, was touted as a miracle cure for a variety of ailments. Today, the practice of medicinal cannibalism is viewed with horror and revulsion. Beyond the ethical and moral implications, there are very real and terrifying health risks associated with consuming human remains. One such risk is contracting kuru. This incurable degenerative condition, similar to mad cow disease, attacks the nervous system, causing tremors, hysterical laughter, slurred speech, and ultimately, a slow and agonizing death. Unlike mad cow disease, which is contracted through contaminated beef, kuru is transmitted exclusively through the consumption of human flesh. Number 12. Animal organ transplants. The transplantation of non-human tissue or organs into human recipients, a procedure known as xenotransplantation, has a surprisingly long and complex history. The earliest documented attempts date back to 1905, when scientists experimented with transplanting slices of rabbit kidney into a child suffering from chronic kidney disease. While these early attempts were ultimately unsuccessful, they laid the groundwork for future research in the field. Fast forward to 1963, a team of surgeons at Tulane University embarked on a series of groundbreaking, although controversial, experiments. Faced with 6 critically ill patients in dire need of kidney transplants, they turned to chimpanzees as potential organ donors. While this daring approach garnered significant attention, it ultimately proved unsuccessful. As medical science progressed and the development of a functional cadaver organ procurement program took hold, interest in xenotransplantation for kidney failure declined. However, amidst these experimental transplants performed by Dr. Keith Reemtsma, one recipient remarkably survived for 9 months with a chimpanzee kidney, even returning to their job as a school teacher. Perhaps the most widely known case of xenotransplantation involves the story of Baby Faye, an infant girl born with a severely underdeveloped heart. In a desperate attempt to save her life in 1984, surgeons implanted a baboon heart into the young child. The procedure initially seemed promising, but tragically, Baby Faye's body rejected the organ, and she passed away after only 20 days. Despite decades of research and advancements in medical technology, xenotransplantation has yet to achieve consistent success. One of the most formidable hurdles lies in the recipient's immune system, which recognizes the transplanted animal organ as foreign and mounts a powerful attack against it. This immune response, typically more aggressive than in human-to-human transplants, often leads to rejection of the transplanted organ or tissue. Another issue is the transmission of infectious agents from animals to humans. The introduction of these foreign microorganisms poses a significant risk, potentially leading to severe infections and further complications, ultimately contributing to organ rejection and, in some cases, even death. Number 11. Animal dung remedies. The history of medicine is filled with unusual and often unsettling remedies that reflect the evolving understanding of disease and healing practices across different cultures and time periods. Some of these treatments, viewed through a modern lens, might seem bizarre, even shocking, yet they offer a glimpse into the ingenuity and limitations of past medical practices. Among the most repugnant remedies employed in ancient times, the use of animal excrement by Egyptian physicians stands out as particularly notable. The Ebers Papyrus, a medical text dating back to 1500 BC, revealed that donkey, dog, gazelle, and even fly dung were highly regarded for their supposed healing properties and their perceived ability to ward off evil spirits. This fascination with animal excrement extended beyond oral ingestion. In a practice that would undoubtedly raise eyebrows today, plugs of crocodile dung were inserted into the vagina as a method of contraception. The efficacy of this method remains questionable, but this practice demonstrates the lengths to which people went in search of effective birth control. The use of animal dung in medicinal practices was not confined to ancient Egypt. In India, cow dung has held a place of reverence for centuries, believed to possess potent healing properties. A mixture of cow dung and cow urine, often consumed directly, is purported to cure a wide range of ailments, including chronic conditions like diabetes, cancer, and arthritis. While these practices might seem utterly repulsive and potentially dangerous by today's standards, they may not have been entirely without merit. Modern research has shown that certain types of animal dung harbor diverse microflora containing antibiotic substances. It's conceivable that these ancient remedies, however unpalatable, might have inadvertently provided some degree of antibacterial benefit, potentially aiding in the treatment of wounds and infections. However, the risks associated with these practices, such as tetanus and other infections, far outweighed any potential benefits. Number 10. Bloodletting. For nearly 2,000 years, bloodletting reigned supreme as one of the most common and enduring medical practices, spanning from antiquity to the late 19th century. This procedure, performed in ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, was believed to be a panacea for a wide array of ailments, and it involved the deliberate withdrawal of blood from a patient's body. The tools of the trade were simple, yet unsettling. A lancet, or in less sophisticated settings, a sharpened piece of wood, was used to pierce a vein, allowing blood to flow freely into a receptacle. This seemingly barbaric practice stemmed from the prevailing medical theory of the time, the humoral theory. Ancient physicians believed that good health hinged on maintaining a delicate balance among the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, often associated with the elements of fire, earth, water, and air, respectively. Any disruption to this equilibrium, typically attributed to an excess of blood, was thought to be the root of illness. Bloodletting, therefore, was seen as a way to restore harmony to the body's internal environment, paving the way for recovery. In some instances, patients might have been spared the knife and instead subjected to a different, although still disconcerting, approach: leeches. These blood-sucking creatures, when applied to the skin, would latch on and draw out blood, consuming several times their own body weight in the process. While bloodletting enjoyed widespread acceptance for centuries, its efficacy was largely based on flawed assumptions. The practice, far from being therapeutic, often proved detrimental, leaving patients weak and vulnerable to infections. In the most unfortunate cases, excessive blood loss resulted in death. Number 9. mouse paste. In ancient Egypt, many people frequently suffered from common ailments such as toothaches and earaches. Toothaches were particularly widespread because of the high sand content in their diet. The gritty sand would wear down the enamel on their teeth, exposing the sensitive nerves and blood vessels underneath. Seeking relief from these agonizing pains, the Egyptians turned to a rather unconventional remedy: dead mice. The logic behind this peculiar practice remains shrouded in mystery, but it was widely believed that these dead rodents possessed curative powers. To alleviate a toothache, the Egyptians would grind dead mice, often in an advanced state of decomposition, into a paste. This concoction was then applied directly to the aching tooth or inflamed gums. For more severe cases, a whole dead mouse left to fester and decay would be pressed against the afflicted area. While the Egyptians might have placed their faith in this unusual remedy, modern sensibilities, along with basic medical knowledge, tell us that this practice was not only ineffective but potentially dangerous. Applying decomposing animal matter, teeming with bacteria, to an already compromised tooth, riddled with exposed nerves and blood vessels, was a recipe for disaster. Far from alleviating pain, this treatment likely exacerbated the problem, introducing a potent cocktail of microbes into the open wound and significantly increasing the risk of serious infection. The use of dead mice in ancient Egyptian dentistry shows the lengths to which people would go in search of a cure and the often misguided nature of early medical practices. Number 8. Goat testicle implants. In the early 20th century, a charismatic and audacious figure named John Brinkley rose to prominence, captivating the nation with his unorthodox medical claims and amassing a fortune in the process. Brinkley, who lacked any formal medical training, boldly proclaimed to have discovered a miracle cure for a range of deeply personal ailments that plagued men: impotence, infertility, and other sexual problems. His solution? A surgical procedure that involved transplanting goat testicles into the scrotum of human patients. Word of Brinkley's alleged prowess spread like wildfire, drawing desperate men from far and wide to his newly established 16-room clinic in 1918. For the sum of $750 per operation, men lined up, eager to undergo this unproven and incredibly risky procedure in the hopes of regaining their virility and fulfilling their desires for fatherhood. Brinkley's enterprise received a substantial boost when the wife of his very first goat gland recipient gave birth to a baby boy. It was a news that spread like wildfire and was seized upon by major newspapers, catapulting Brinkley into the national spotlight. However, this seemingly miraculous outcome was merely a coincidence, entirely unrelated to the dubious procedure. Tragically, Brinkley's surgical interventions proved not only ineffective, but downright dangerous. The transplanted goat testicles failed to deliver on their promised benefits. Instead, they triggered a cascade of complications, often exacerbating the very conditions they were meant to address. The consequences of Brinkley's reckless experimentation were dire. Many patients endured excruciating pain, infections, and life-altering hormonal imbalances. Even more tragically, dozens of men lost their lives, their pursuit of a better life cruelly cut short by Brinkley medical malpractice. Number 7. Gladiatorial blood as a cure. The medical practices of the ancient Romans were a mix of remarkable innovation and sheer madness. One particularly striking example of this duality lies in their treatment of epilepsy, a neurological disorder that has challenged medical practitioners throughout history. In the brutal world of the Roman gladiatorial arena, where life and death collided in a spectacle of violence and entertainment, a peculiar belief took hold. The blood of a fallen gladiator held potent healing properties, capable of curing epilepsy. As a wounded gladiator lay bleeding on the arena floor, a strange sight would often unfold. An individual, driven by desperation and fueled by this conviction, would rush towards the dying warrior. There, amidst the blood-soaked sand, he would lower himself, pressing his lips against the gaping wounds of the fallen gladiator, and drink deeply of his blood, as if attempting to absorb his remaining life force. This ritual, far from being a rare occurrence, played out with disturbing regularity. Those who sought a cure for their epilepsy in this gruesome manner believed that the gladiator's blood held the key to their recovery. The spectacle could take an even more gruesome turn if the gladiator had been disemboweled. In such cases, the crowd might surge forward, each person desperate to grab a piece of the warrior's liver. The liver was then sold to those suffering from epilepsy, with instructions to consume 9 doses to rid themselves of the disease. Unfortunately, this practice had no scientific basis and likely did more harm than good. The consumption of another person's blood, particularly in the unsanitary conditions of the arena, carried a significant risk of transmitting infectious diseases. Number 6. Stone Age. Dentistry. Toothaches and dental woes are not merely modern-day afflictions. The agonizing grip of tooth decay has plagued humanity for millennia, prompting our ancestors to devise ingenious, although often painful, remedies. The earliest documented dentist, Surgeries, practiced his craft in ancient Egypt around 2660 BC. Holding the prestigious titles of Chief of Dentists and Chief Physician to Pharaoh Djoser, Surgeries' expertise was highly sought after in a time when dental care was rudimentary at best. In those days, treating dental ailments often involved filling the afflicted tooth, gum, or abscess with a variety of substances, hoping to alleviate pain and stave off further decay. Honey, with its antibacterial properties, was a popular choice, along with a range of herbs and plants believed to possess healing properties. Some evidence even points to the use of gold, though it remains unclear whether this precious metal was employed as a filling material during a patient's lifetime or as part of post-mortem rituals. Astonishingly, the oldest known dental drill, discovered in present-day Pakistan, predates Surgeries by thousands of years. This remarkable artifact, crafted from flint, provides evidence of skilled dental practitioners plying their trade as far back as 9,000 years ago. The discovery of an entire tribe bearing the telltale signs of dental work further proves the existence of these early dentistry pioneers. It seems that a resourceful dentist, armed with nothing more than a flint drill, tended to the aching teeth of his tribesmen. The evidence suggests a level of skill that belies the primitive tools of the time, including a case involving the removal of tooth enamel and subsequent restoration of the cavity wall. Intriguingly, this tribe was renowned for its bead craftsmanship, and it is believed that their mastery of this art form played a pivotal role in their surprisingly advanced dental practices. Nevertheless, it is safe to assume that any dental procedures performed during those times, however skillfully executed, were likely accompanied by excruciating pain. Number 5. Cutting for speech disorders. Throughout history, humanity has grappled with understanding and treating medical conditions, often resorting to practices that, in retrospect, seem shockingly misguided. One such practice, documented across various cultures, including ancient India, as early as the first millennium BC, involved the act of tongue cutting as a supposed cure for speech disorders, particularly stuttering. The rationale behind this gruesome practice stemmed from a flawed understanding of the human body and the mechanics of speech. It was believed that speech impediments originated from a physical abnormality within the tongue itself. Therefore, by removing the perceived flaw, practitioners aimed to restore fluent speech. The procedures, often performed without anesthesia or sterile conditions, involved various methods of mutilation. Sharp knives, scissors, heated blades, or even animal teeth were employed to remove portions of the tongue, ranging from small incisions to significant amputations. The immediate aftermath was predictably horrific, characterized by excruciating pain, profuse bleeding, and a high risk of life-threatening infections. The long-term consequences were equally grim. Rather than improving speech, tongue cutting often exacerbated existing impairments or introduced new ones. The loss of tissue and potential nerve damage could lead to difficulties with articulation, swallowing, and even breathing. The psychological trauma inflicted upon individuals subjected to this barbaric practice cannot be overstated. Number 4. Ritualistic sacrifices for health. The practice of human sacrifice has cast a long shadow over our collective history. Emerging in the mists of prehistory, it persisted across diverse cultures and continents for millennia. However, by the Iron Age, a period marked by significant societal and intellectual shifts, human sacrifice began to decline. Across Africa, Europe, and Asia, this once widespread practice gradually lost its grip, eventually regarded as a barbaric relic of a bygone era during classical antiquity. The motivations behind human sacrifice were as varied as the cultures that practiced it, often mirroring the reasons behind religious offerings in general. At their core, these acts were driven by a fundamental human desire to appease the gods and secure blessings in return. The dedication of a newly constructed temple or bridge, for instance, might be accompanied by human sacrifice to ensure its stability and ward off misfortune. Fertility was another powerful driving force. The Aztecs, for example, made offerings to Totec, their god of agriculture, in hopes of bountiful harvests. Ancient Japanese legends speak of a particularly chilling practice known as hitobashira, or human pillar. This ritual involved the entombment of young women within or near the foundations of important structures, their souls believed to act as spiritual guardians, protecting the buildings from calamities and enemy attacks. The sheer scale of human sacrifice could reach staggering proportions, as illustrated by the Aztecs. During the reconsecration of the Great Pyramid of Tenochtitlan in 1487, they reportedly sacrificed an estimated 80,400 prisoners over a span of just 4 days. The ancient Maya civilization, renowned for their architectural and astronomical prowess, also engaged in human sacrifice. For the Maya, offering human lives to the gods was considered essential for the survival and prosperity of their civilization. The elaborate religious ceremonies often culminated in the ritualistic killing of victims who were captives or individuals who volunteered for this sacred duty. Number 3. Mummification. Mummification was a cornerstone of ancient Egyptian culture, and it endured for millennia. The earliest examples of mummification, dating back to prehistoric times, were likely unintentional. In the arid Egyptian climate, where rainfall was nearly non-existent, bodies buried in shallow sand pits were sometimes naturally preserved by the desiccating effects of sun and sand. Around 2600 BCE, during the 4th and 5th dynasties, a pivotal shift occurred. Egyptians, it seems, began to intentionally mummify their deceased, developing elaborate rituals and techniques that would define their mortuary practices for centuries to come. This practice, refined over generations, persisted for well over 2,000 years, extending into the Roman period. The process itself was a marvel of ancient science and ritual. Skilled embalmers carefully removed all moisture from the body, transforming it into a desiccated form resistant to decay. The goal was to maintain the deceased's body in a state as lifelike as possible, reflecting the belief that preserving the body was crucial for the afterlife. The success of these techniques is evident today, as many mummified bodies still retain features that offer a glimpse into what these individuals looked like over 3,000 years ago. As one might expect, pharaohs received the most lavish mummification treatments, their preserved bodies interred within elaborate tombs filled with treasures. The practice was not limited to royalty. Members of the nobility and high-ranking officials were also mummified. In some cases, common people were mummified, though the process was costly and inaccessible to most. The quality of mummification varied widely depending on the price paid for the services, with more elaborate procedures reserved for those who could afford them. Interestingly, mummification wasn't solely reserved for humans. Animals, too, played a significant role in Egyptian religious beliefs, and some were accorded the honor of mummification. The sacred bulls of early dynasties, for example, were laid to rest in their own dedicated cemetery at Saqqara. Baboons, cats, birds, and even crocodiles were sometimes mummified, particularly in later dynasties. Number 2. Ancient nasal surgery. Rhinoplasty, commonly known as a nose job, has become so popular today that it's often considered a minor form of plastic surgery. However, the concept of reshaping the nose is far from new. Historical records reveal that rhinoplasty surgeries were being performed in northern India as early as 500 BC. During this time, facial mutilation was a common punishment for various religious or political crimes, and this left many individuals disfigured. In response to this, an Indian physician named Sushruta developed a groundbreaking technique for nasal reconstruction that laid the foundation for modern rhinoplasty. Sushruta's method involved taking small flaps of skin from the patient's cheek or forehead and using this tissue to construct a new nose. This innovative procedure allowed those who had been punished with facial mutilation to regain their appearance and rejoin their communities without the stigma of disfigurement. Although the results of these early surgeries varied, with some patients experiencing successful reconstructions and others faced complications, Sushruta's technique was a significant medical advancement. Remarkably, this pioneering approach remained largely unknown outside of India for nearly 2,000 years. Today, rhinoplasty remains one of the most frequently performed plastic surgeries worldwide, thanks to the development of new techniques that produce excellent results with minimal recovery time. Modern nose reshaping surgery can address a variety of concerns, such as correcting humps or bumps, refining the nasal profile and bridge, and enhancing overall facial harmony. Number 1. Leech therapy. Leech therapy, also known as hyrudotherapy, might seem like a practice from the distant past, but it still has a place in some areas of modern alternative medicine. Advocates of leech therapy believe that these small, blood-sucking creatures can help treat a range of conditions, including arthritis, migraines, and even cardiovascular diseases. The process involves placing live leeches on the skin, where they attach themselves and begin to draw blood. What makes leeches particularly interesting is their saliva, which contains anticoagulants and enzymes. These substances are thought to improve blood circulation and promote healing in the body. Despite the enthusiasm from some quarters, leech therapy remains a controversial topic. The medical community often views the practice with skepticism, mainly because of the potential risks involved. These include the possibility of infection and the fact that more effective and reliable treatments are readily available for the conditions leeches are purported to treat. While leech therapy has roots that go back to ancient civilizations like Egypt and Greece, its comeback in recent times is mostly limited to niche groups and very specific medical situations. One such situation where leech therapy has been accepted is in reconstructive surgery. The FDA has approved the use of leeches in certain cases to help restore blood flow to tissues that have been damaged. In these controlled settings, leeches can be quite effective. However, outside of these specific contexts, most healthcare professionals are hesitant to recommend leech therapy. The risks of allergic reactions and other complications make it a treatment that doctors generally advise against, especially when there are safer and more advanced medical options available today. Leech therapy may have its place in history, but its role in modern medicine is very limited. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.